tonight. Thanks. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We're going to be going over the IRONMAN Lake Placid, giving a course preview, going over some pre-race tips. So for those that don't know me, just a little bit about me. I'm a longtime QT2 athlete, kind of longtime pro triathlete. IRONMAN Lake Placid, frequent flyer. I've raced there 4 times, and then I'm also a QT2 coach. And as a coach, I think I've had probably like 20 different athletes or the same athletes race IRONMAN Lake Placid in the past. I'm very familiar with having people let me be a part of their journey through that race. I'm from upstate New York, Rochester. So Lake Placid is kind of like our hometown Ironman. I've been going there for over a decade, probably once or twice a summer to either train or coach or spectator race. So just very, very familiar with the area. Love it up there. I'll try to keep this to an hour because I love it so much up there. I could talk about it all night. And a decade ago, in a different time in the pro field, I was got the honor to be the IRONMAN Lake Placid Female Champion. So just a little overview of what we're going to go over tonight. We're going to just touch on the QT2 Systems 5 Cornerstones. We'll talk about how they apply to just the final weeks of training. We'll go over all of the logistics for pre-race stuff, for check-in stuff, and for day before race morning. Then we'll preview the course, break it down, really get a little bit granular with it, and then talk about just race day, how to tackle the course in terms of pacing and fueling and so on. So for those, just a reminder for the QT2 athletes, and for those who aren't QT2 athletes, our 5 cornerstones of everything that goes into triathlon are the training, restoration and day-to-day nutrition, race fueling, workout fueling, pacing, and mental fitness. So if we start to look at how the cornerstones apply to our build into Lake Placid, if we look at the final weeks, which we're all, kind of deep in right now, 2.5 weeks out, this is when we're starting to get into the taper. This is where you'll see kind of final key race specific sessions and intermixed with plenty of just easy days recovery workouts. The idea is to try to simulate race conditions and intensities during training. So what that might look like for Lake Placid is trying to, get in some lake swimming or just some steady swimming. You want to probably try to incorporate some sort of steady, moderate climbs into your rides. You want to get in some descent practice, run hills up and down. You want to just make sure you're prepared for any weather conditions. So Reem and I were kind of talking about this before this started. Lake Placid can literally do anything and everything, and it might all happen on race day. I mean, I've raced when it's been 53 and raining. I've raced when it's been 85 and sunny. Kind of a typical day there is that it will start off like cooler and rainy, and then usually the clouds will kind of burn off by the afternoon, and then it gets, maybe not super hot, but it will get sunny and muggy. That's, kind of what most race days end up being, but there are days that are just, hot and sunny the whole time. There are days that are torrential downpours the whole time. It's the mountains. What it's doing on one part of the course might be completely different from what it's doing on another part of the course. So just bottom line, be prepared for any weather conditions, and that can include wind as well. You want to make sure you're comfortable just, descending and wind descending across winds as well. If you can train on the course, do so. If not, the one thing a lot of people will do is within the couple days before the race, I'll talk more about the keen descent later, but they'll just kind of ride down the descent and have a family member or somebody pick them up and bring them back up, just so they can get an idea of what that's like, since it's not physiologically taxing, but for a lot of people it is kind of something they mentally worry about. And then you also want to try to do, a dress rehearsal ride and run where you test your gear. Ironman's a very long day, so you want to make sure what you're wearing isn't chafing somewhere weird. You want to make sure your race wheels are something you're comfortable with, brakes not rubbing, etc. You also, you want to make sure you're training at your race targets, whether that's heart rate, rating of reserved exertion, pace, or power. This is not the time to be, like jumping in a group ride and hammering with the group. It's the time to be executing what you plan to do. you're not going to really making any significant fitness gains in this time. You want to just focus on keeping up event or discipline frequency. You want to keep up the feel of what running and swimming don't want to overtrain or panic train, which is kind of directed at me right now. Err on the side of recovery. It's more important to be rested than to be sharp. Being just like 5% undertrained is less harmful than being like 1% overtrained heading into an Ironman, and include some days off in there to fully recover. In terms of moving on to the nutrition restoration cornerstone, these final weeks, you want to be making sure you're taking in half of your body weight in ounces and fluid in addition to what you lose during workouts. Aim for 4 servings each of fruits and vegetables a day. Keep the nutrient density up. The day before, probably a long run, long ride, try to take in a replenishment meal that's high in carbs, low in fat to really top off the glycogen stores. Make sleep a priority. I mean, if you can get 7.5 to 8 hours per night, try to do so. Even if that means like skipping a recovery session or something here or there, the sleep is more important than trying to squeeze in every single workout. Take some anti-inflammatory measures. So that can include things like omega-3 fatty acids, hydration, reducing stress, sleep as able. Try to taper down caffeine in this time. Easier said than done. Target less than 800 milligrams a week. Ideally, that's not going to happen for everyone, but make that a target. And don't forget to take in recovery drinks after workouts. Then once you get to race week in terms of nutrition, try to keep your diet relatively normal until you get within like a few days of the race. If it's hot, if it's forecasted to be hot, which it very well could be, add some extra salt to your meals. Again, keep focusing on hydration and keep continuing down to taper down caffeine with none on the day prior to race day. Usually if you can go off like 2 to 3 days prior to race day, you'll get a little bit more of a benefit from it on race day. You'll increase your sensitivity a bit. Fat load 5 days prior. So 5 nights prior to the race, you want to have a meal that's kind of just satisfying, has some fat in it, like burger, that kind of thing. Continue to carb load, and then carb load 2 nights before, and then breakfast 1 day before are going to be where you want to put your main carb load meals. Continue to make sleep a priority and stay off your feet as much as possible. I mean, obviously you'll have to be on your feet a little bit for expo, for bike check-in. Don't panic if you feel like you're on your feet too much, but try to, if you can, just sit down a little bit more, do so. And then moving on to the fueling cornerstone in the final weeks, fuel in accordance with your race fueling plan every session. You really, really want to nail that down. Use the products you want to use on race day. Purpose is to train your gut to for race day, to get used to your sports drink, your gels, your bars, etc., and continue to use a recovery drink. On race day, fueling is one of the most important things, especially for a full Ironman. It can very, very well become a limiter on performance, but you have complete control over it. So starting now through race day, make sure you're really making that a priority every session. Moving on to the mental fitness cornerstone in these final weeks, which I think everyone can struggle with a little bit. Reduce the external pressures as best you can. Focus on what you can control. So the things you're in total control of on race day are just your attitude and your fueling. You want to trust your preparation. This is not the time to be second guessing. Oh, I should have done X, Y, Z. Just, consider that you've put in this whole body of work, that, everything is a conglomerate as a whole. You've done all this work. You are ready. Begin visualization. So think about what a great performance might look like and how you might respond if something goes differently. And even if it's, not, like say you get a flat tire, just visualize yourself calmly changing the flat. And, I've had my electronic shifting just completely go out on that course and had to ride the last 27 miles in one gear. And it wasn't something I'd ever visualized, but because I, had visualized staying calm in other circumstances, I was able to just take that as it came. It wasn't the most fun, but it was, the kind of thing that when you're out there on the course, you want to have the mental fitness bank to be able to deal with anything that's thrown over you. Again, list your goals and targets. So QT2, we define goals as the things you have 100% control over. So this would be the things like, I'm going to drink 1.5 bottles of Gatorade an hour, or I'm going to keep my attitude positive and those kind of things. Targets, and then list your targets. So targets are your numbers based. So that could be something like, I want to average 180 watts on the bike, or I want to run at a heart rate of 155. That would be more of targets, which you have some control over, but a part of it's going to end up what your body gives you on the day. You want to internalize the race specific workout feels, know what it feels like, and then just enjoy that, you know, you're ready, getting ready to do an Ironman. You're so fit. Be grateful for having the opportunity to do that. All right, so pre-race logistics, we're going to kind of get into more detail of these. I'm not going to read this whole list, but again, it's, you know, just make sure everything's set, ready to go, pack, confirm everything. Okay, so moving kind of into more detail on the pre-race logistics. If we look at our race check-in logistics, the IRONMAN Lake Placid Expo and Athlete Check-in Ironman Village is now at the horse show grounds. It's been there for a few years. This is located at 5514 Cascade Road. This is down Route 73. It's about a couple miles outside of town, just past the airport, just before River Road on the left. Plenty of parking available on site, pretty easy to find, pretty easy to get to. The race check-in will be going on Thursday and Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You cannot pick up your packet on Saturday, so make sure you're there by Thursday or Friday. You need to bring your active.com registration and QR code and a photo ID, and try to get to the expo early. Try to limit your time there, not spend so much time on your feet in the sun. If you can coincide it with the athlete briefing, there's 3 of those also at the horse show grounds. There's 5 of those. So you can go Thursday, 11 a.m. or 2 p.m., Friday at noon or 3 p.m., or Saturday at 11 a.m. So when you check in, your race packet will include your race bib that's to be worn on the run, just the run. You'll get stickers for your bike frame, your bike stem, helmet, and gear bags. You'll get swim cap. You'll get your bike checkout ticket for someone else to check out your bike if you're unable to after the race, or if you just don't feel like it. You'll get your athlete wristband that you'll keep on for the whole weekend, need it to get into everything. Then you'll get your 5 gear bags. So your gear bags, for people who've done Ironmans, this is total review. If not, this is unique to a full Ironman. So gear bags, you'll get a morning clothes bag. That's everything that you'll want, wearing immediately post-race, that you'll want immediately post-race. And then you can shove what you wear in the morning in there. You can't, everything has to fit in the bag. You can't like put in a bike pump and tie it around the pump, or try to shove like a backpack that's sticking out in there. It has to be contained in the bag. That you will drop off race morning near the swim start, and you can pick it up post-race from 3 p.m. until midnight. Bike gear bag. So this is everything that you're going to want for the bike leg. So you'll put your helmet in there, put shoes in there, socks if you wear them on the bike, sunglasses. If you have any nutrition that's not physically on your bike to shove in pockets, you would put that in that bag. Any sunscreen, if you want to put extra layers on after you get out of the swim, etc. This will get dropped off at bike check-in on Saturday. And then after you complete your bike, or after you complete your swim gear gets put back into this bag, and that's how it gets, your swim gear gets delivered back to you after the race. It will be with your bike after the race. And bike special needs. So bike special needs, we'll get to this. They'll run into about halfway through the bike. This is where you would put, you know, if you're using your own bike, new bottles, if you want to put more bottles in there, if you wanted extra nutrition in there, you could put that in there. Any like goodies you might want. I typically put a spare flat kit in there, just in case I was to get flat in the first half of the ride, I could pick one up for the second. This gets dropped off race morning on Parkside Drive near transition. You might have to ask someone where it is, but it's pretty easy to find. And Ironman Lake Placid does let you pick up your special needs bags the following day. You can pick it up before 11 a.m. on Parkside Drive at the drop off. And moving to the run gear bag, so just like the bike gear bag, pretty self-explanatory. You put anything you want on the run on there, including race belt and number, run shoes, socks, sunscreen, nutrition, hat, visor, clothing if you might be out late, maybe a headlamp in there. This again gets dropped off at the bike check-in on Saturday. And like this, the bike bag, your bike gear, so your helmet, shoes will go into it after you finish the ride, and then it goes with your bike after the race. And then finally, run special needs bags. Again, anything that you think you might want midway through the run. So you might want to put some extra clothes and socks in there. I mean, if you think you're going to be on the run course past dark, it can get a little bit chilly. So it's not a bad idea to put in like a long sleeve shirt or some arm warmers or something. If there's any, specific nutrition, if you want to put like some candy in there, so just something to perk yourself up halfway through the run, that would go in there. This again gets dropped off race morning, kind of like behind the swim start on Mirror Lake Drive. There's a stone wall there. That's where the run special needs goes. And again, can be picked up before 11 a.m. on Monday. And then just put a Sharpie there. I mean, you'll get the stickers to the gear bags, but it's also a good idea just to write your number on there in permanent marker. I've had experiences where my number got washed off and I didn't get my special needs bags, and that wasn't fun. So, it's just good to have a little insurance policy. All right, so continuing at the race check-in logistics, mandatory bike check-in and timing chip pickup are your timing chip you'll pick up when you check in at the start of athlete check-in area. Bike check-in, on the other hand, will be on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Olympic Oval. So this is where you will drop off your bike gear, your run gear bags. You should be able to access, I think I've only done like one Ironman where you couldn't access your bags race morning. So normally you can access your bags race morning if you wanted to like put in some extra gels or something you forgot in there. If needed, if there's rain in the forecast, I would recommend just protecting your bike, protecting any electronics parts. They're supposed to be rain safe, but again, I've had shifting issues after my bike's been poured on overnight. So it's better to be safe than sorry. All right, so moving closer to the race, now continuing on with the day before in terms of nutrition and restoration. So this is when, day before is when breakfast is when you really want to be targeting your largest carbohydrate meal of the day. Consume it by 9 a.m. About 90 to 125 grams of carbs and 20 grams of protein or less. After that, taper your food throughout the days, keeping your last meal kind of light. Again, just mostly carbs, a little bit of protein, highly digestible, low fat, low fiber. If you can, come to QT2 team breakfast if you're on the team. Again, you want to hydrate, avoid caffeine, and keep the legs up. Final checks the day before, get in this when you want to get in your shakeout, runs, bike swims, Friday or Saturday, whatever works for you. Charge your electronics and then set out gear for race morning. So the beauty of the bags is that most things should be packed and dropped off and ready to go. So you really will just need your swim stuff, your tri-kit, swim cap, wetsuit, timing chip, etc. And you probably want to, pack your morning clothes bag too. Just put in what you want after the race. So final checks, again, confirm your race morning logistics, can finalize your plan for getting to the starting line, go to bed early, set multiple alarms, sit there and look confused, whatever you need to do. All right, moving on to race morning in terms of nutrition. I think we've, kind of continuing on with, you want to just keep it as digestible as possible. So you want your simple carbs, you want fluids, you want electrolytes, and a small amount of protein. You really want to avoid fat, fiber, any extra vitamins or minerals. Try not to slop a whole bunch of peanut butter on a whole wheat bagel or something. Coure diet recommends applesauce, banana, a scoop of whey protein, and sports drink. If you've used something different, that's fine too, but you want to try to complete eating your breakfast 3 hours prior to the race start, so that, you can get up early, eat the breakfast, and you can go back to bed for a little bit if you need to. Sip on sports drink until the race start, and then take a gel 15 to 20 minutes prior to the race start. I know some full Ironman plans too will have having like half a bar again an hour before the race plan. All right, so race morning logistics in terms of parking and transportation. A lot of the lodging, the beauty of Lake Placid is a lot of the lodging is within walking distance. If you are not within walking distance, there are several locations you can take a shuttle to behind the transition on race day. So the shuttles run from 4:30 a.m. race morning to 1 a.m. on Monday if you need to get back after the race.
They told her all about me today. The CEO of her.
Just make sure everyone's on mute. So shuttles are located at Elderwood or Adirondack Health parking lots, Lake Placid Elementary School, and the Lake Placid Firehouse. The athlete guide says face masks are required. I don't know if that's a carryover from past years. I've had athlete guides say that, and it's not, but yeah, have one just in case. Transition is open from 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. on race morning. You want to get there, just try to review the transition layout. So, I mean, try to want to actually look at the transition layout when you do your bike track check-in, but, just give one more race day morning look over in terms of where your bags are located, where the change tents are located, and so on. Make sure you have time to drop off your special needs and morning clothes bags. Apply sunscreen and, get in those last sports strength gels, etc. And if you need to, this would be when you would put, fill your front bottle on the bike, put bottles on the bike, etc. All right, so moving on to the course, just a general overview. Swim starts at Mirror Lake Beach. T2 1 and T2 in the finish are at the Olympic Oval. The swim is a clockwise 2-loop rectangular swim. Bike is got a 2-loop kind of mix of everything terrain-wise. Road conditions are mostly good throughout the loop. I just rode it like a week and a half ago, and it's in good shape. I mean, if you've ridden anything in upstate New York or anywhere that has snow, you are more than prepared. It's actually probably in some of the better shape that I've seen on that course in particular, and on any Ironman courses. So, and then the run is also a 2-loop course. It's downhill, then there's kind of a long, flat, slightly to rolling section, then you go up what you went down and repeat. So breaking that down further. So our swim course overview. Oops. So the swim start is 6:30 a.m. and it is a self-seated rolling start. And it's a lake swim, 2 loops as the Australian exit in the middle. So you run out onto the beach, run back in. You'll self-seed in the swim start corrals, rolling start from the beach. The water temperature will be announced race morning. So it's more than likely will be kind of high 60s to low to mid 70s, but be ready for anything. I think wetsuits are permitted up to and including 76.1 Fahrenheit. I believe it was 2011, it was over 76. Every other year since then, it's been below, but usually it's, somewhere between like 71 to 73. If it's over 76.1, wetsuits are optional. So you can still wear a wetsuit, but you are not eligible for awards or world championship slots. And you will start in a separate wave after everyone else. And if it's a non-wetsuit swim, you have to hit your swimwear must be 100% textile. So you can't wear like neoprene floaty shorts. You can't have any sort of rubberized material in your swimwear. And it cannot extend past your elbows or knees. So if you cannot wear like calf compression socks, if it's a non-wetsuit swim. There might be sun coming from the east, coming from the right. Usually there's just the way the mountains are, there's usually not really terrible sun glare there, but if it's a sunny day, you might want tinted goggles. And pretty unique to the Ironman Lake Placid course, what it's kind of famous for is there is a buoy line, which is just a rope that's kind of several feet below the surface along the entire course. Technically, you can just watch the buoy line the entire way, not sight. I wouldn't recommend never looking up because you're in a lake with like 2,500 other people. If you swim directly on the buoy line, though, expect contact. Everyone wants to get on the buoy line. So if you are a more tentative swimmer, stay further to the left. And also on the buoy line, watch your buoys. If you stay directly on the line, you will smash into the giant inflatable buoys. I've done that several times there. You're going to try to keep the buoys on the right. First half of the course will be marked by yellow buoys. There'll be 2 large red turn buoys at the far end, and then orange buoys will be on the way back down. Almost always calm conditions. You might get like a slight bit of surface chop on Mirror Lake, but it's called Mirror Lake just because it is generally so calm. And then just it's a small lake, so when you have 2,500 people all swimming the same direction, you can get kind of like a nice whirlpool effect in there. You usually tend to end up with a little bit quicker of a swim time, which is nice. And then when you exit, you have a long run to transition, but this whole run is carpeted. There's spectators all along the way. So it goes by quickly. It's actually kind of fun. So just some pictures of the swim course. We've got, just yellow buoys out, all the way out, orange buoys all the way back in. Usually there's some ducks swimming around, pretty calm lake. This is just sort of overview of the swim start. So this is where you will run out for your first lap, run back in for your second. You'll kind of start on on the sand here. When you go under the arches, when your swim time officially starts, when you initially start. And then this is really flattering picture, just showing that there's the carpet coming all the way up Parkside to T1. So swim day pacings, as I said before, it's a self-seated rolling start. Just be realistic about your swim time. Usually you want to kind of start a little bit up tempo, then try to, get in a good build, into a good group, and settle into a tempo. If you're an anxious swimmer, though, just start conservative and build. It's a very long day. You're not going to make yourself in the first 200 yards of the swim. So, ease into it if you need to. You're going to get hit, so expect it. Like I said, this is not a very big lake. It's not a very big swim course. There tends to be contact. If you want less contact, stay wide to the left, stay further from the buoy line. Use other swimmers to your benefit to draft and sight off of. It's, again, this is one of the easier courses to sight on, but you have a million people around you too, so it's hard to go too far off course. As far as the buoys, again, as I said before, try to keep them to your right. Turns will be crowded, stay wide. One thing to be, prepared for is the top pros are told on their second lap to stay to the inside of the buoy line. So the male pros go off at 6:25, females 6:27, and the rolling start starts at 6:30. So probably from about 6:30 to 6:50 to 7:30, you'll have a lot of people coming through for their second lap. So if you're kind of on your first lap, then just try to stay to the outside of the buoy lines, keep the inside clear. I can attest that having faster swimmers swim directly over you as sort of a weaker female pro swimmer, it's not fun. So if you can avoid that just by staying a little bit outside to the right, to the left of the buoys, do so. And try to increase the kick for the last 100 to 200 yards to prepare the legs for running to transition. All right. And then again, after you exit the swim and run up to transition, you'll run and grab your transition bag, your bike bag, and run into the change tent and get changed for the bike there. And that's when you'll put your swim gear back into the bag and head out onto the bike. All right, so our bike course overview here. So bike, again, it's kind of one big loop with, got a couple little out and backs each way, and then like sort of this little out and back through town. Then you come back through town, do it again. Ironman elevation on the site says it's 4,100 feet of elevation, close to 42. Most of I don't know where they got that from. Most of the files I've seen have it more around 6,000 to 6,500 feet of elevation, but we'll break it down. But again, you kind of go up, come down, a little bit, flat to rolling, get some climbing, and then you get the big climbs back into town. So let's break that down further. So again, kind of touched on this first bullet point already. So if we break down the course into sections, I'll go through these, but kind of have the section from transition out of town to the Keene descent. Then you have the Keene descent. After that, you get, I don't really know what to call this section, but it's just the route 9N from Keene into Upper J. Then you'll turn left, head up Route 86 here. You'll do the Hazelton out of back, and then you'll have the climb into town. So starting with this transition to the Keene descent, this initial section, it's about 12 miles long. You just immediately out of transition, be cautious. You come out of transition and immediately go down sort of a steep hill. They have hay bales at the bottom of the hill. It often is wet, so brakes might not work as well. So be very, very careful of that. That's not the place to ruin your entire day. If you're not skilled at like getting your feet into the shoes, this is not the first race to try it at. And then, so just be very heads up there. And again, be very heads up on the very first section of Route 73 out of town. It's, actually your run course hill, but there's some bumps in the pavement. It's kind of a steep downhill. So again, just be careful there, be heads up. There's a lot of people around. So after you get down, initially out of town, then you hit your first climb out of town. So this is it. by the standards of the race, it is not that impressive, but it's about a 400-foot climb over a little over 2 miles. So it's about a 3.5 grade. And when you get to it, it doesn't necessarily look like it's that steep. It doesn't necessarily look like it's that long, but it's very early in the race. There is a lot of adrenaline built up. It's somewhere where you can very, very easily go too hard. So do not get carried away on that hill. Let everyone pass you. Just spin up it, stay at your targets. And then after you get up that climb, then you'll, got a little bit of rolling stuff. You do this sort of little out and back to Mount Hovenberg, which isn't really that remarkable. It's just wide, smooth road, and do a little bit more, kind of get a little bit of descending, and then you hit the Keen Descent. So Keen Descent is probably one of the more famous portions of this course. It's about an 1,100-foot drop over the course of about 4 to 4.5 miles, which comes out to about a -5% grade. Most of the sections range from about -5% to -7%. So it's a descent, but it's not the steepest thing you will ever see in your life. And it can think of it as sort of divided into 3 sections that are demarcated by these truck signs. So you'll get to these signs that have like a little picture of an incline with a truck on it, and we'll say next 1.25 or 2 miles or something like that. And between them, it flattens out a little bit, so you're able to control your speed, which is nice. The first section is very freshly paved. It's great road condition. It's probably the best I've ever seen it. It's probably the least steep section of the course. It's by, you'll see like a hiking for Cascade sign before you get to it. I just would say if it's like just starting to rain, be careful, because that can sort of bring out the oils on freshly paved road, but otherwise it should be really, really nice riding there. The second section, it is a little bit rougher. It has, if you're familiar with like riding in mountains at all, it has some of the, like just the bumps, the snowplow heaves, which they're regular, they're rideable, it's not too bad, but it's smoother in the tire tracks too, which is nicer. So it's a little bit easier, will be easier to ride on race day than it is in training. There are some curves on the second section that you can't necessarily see around. They seem a little bit scary if you've never ridden it before, but they're not too bad if you've ridden it before. And then third section, road conditions a little bit better than the second section. This has a little bit more curves. It has a couple steeper parts, but again, it's, very rideable. The whole time way it is possible to control your speed. So it's never at a point where it's like so steep that you feel like you're going to pitch yourself over your front of your bike trying to brake, assuming it's dry. Obviously, if it's raining, which it very well could be, then the brake pads might not work as well if you're still on rim brakes like me, but whole time it is possible to keep in control. If you are more cautious though, definitely stay right, because there will be people, I've gone down this descent at 25 miles an hour. I've gone down it at 50 miles an hour. So, you can't hear people coming up on you. Stay to the right. If you're, a more cautious descender, just make sure that there's plenty of road for people to get around you on. Again, be prepared for any conditions, and then just you stay calm and controlled. Actually, a lot of times it seems so scary before the race, but when you're actually on it in the race, it's actually kind of like a nice little relaxing, well, not relaxing, but it's a nice breather from having to work quite as hard. So this is just, some pictures, just Google Street Views of the Keen Descent. And this is the first section through Cascade. I think this is before they repaved it. This is, parts of the second section, and then this is parts of the third. And the other thing that's nice about race day is you'll have the entire descending lane, and then in these areas where they have, 2 lanes coming up the hill, they'll block off kind of to the white line, and then they'll just have 1 lane for traffic. So you get a lot of road to work with too, which makes it a lot safer. Moving on, once you get to the bottom of the Keen Descent, you hit 9N, which is, it's mostly flat to slightly downhill, a couple little bumps, but it's usually a very fast section of the course. It's, a little under 10 miles long, smooth sailing, good conditions. It's a beautiful section just to kind of cruise in your bars. You've got the river to your right, and it's a good place to really concentrate on refueling and refilling and all that good stuff, because probably when you're going down the descent, that's not going to be necessarily your priority. So it's a good place to really settle in and get back into routine there. Once you come off 9N, that nice long section there, you will make a left turn from J, head up Route 86. This is, make sure when you make that left-hand turn, you're coming right into kind of one of the steeper climbs on that course. So make sure you have your gearing ready. Make sure you're in little ring before you hit that climb. So you'll get immediately kind of climb up the steep hill, then you get like a little bit of a downhill, then it climbs up more, and then comes back down a little bit on this section of 86. It's about a 200-foot elevation gain total when you factor in the descents, depending on what file you look at. These climbs, they don't necessarily get talked about as much as some of the climbs coming back up from Wilmington to town, but I have always found that they're a little bit, some of the tougher ones on the course, because they are a little bit, especially the ones straight off 86, or straight off from J, it's a little bit steeper than some of the stuff you'll see on the other parts of the course. And also it's a section that it can, if it's a hot day, if it's humid, it can get steamy on there, because, you know, you go from having like a 35, 40 mile an hour wind on the descent to, you know, riding, you get this nice flat, fast portion, and then you turn, you're climbing at like 5 miles an hour. So you lose the wind. And also I just have always felt like the way the trees kind of trap the air, you don't get a lot of air movement there. So just be aware that it can get pretty hot there. After that, you'll make a right-hand turn and you'll do this Hazelton out and back. So this is just, there's some rolling hills on there. That's kind of this portion here. There's a little bit of a climb towards the end, then you come back down it. There's some curves. It's fun to ride, you know, it's wooded, it's pretty. It's about 9 miles total. So it's just, I prefer it to the old out and back that they used to have. It's a nice area. So I'm looking, this is actually, obviously, it won't be fall, but this is your hill coming up 86 initially when you make that left-hand turn. And then this is where, I think you'll make your right-hand turn, head out to Hazelton Road and do your out and back. All right, so finally we get to the big part of the course, which is the climb from Wilmington to back up to Lake Placid. So this is about 1,000 foot of climbing over about 11 to 12 miles total. I mean, you'll hit some various landmarks along the way. There'll be an A&W, there'll be a campground, you'll go past Flume Falls, you'll go past Whiteface Mountain, you'll see High Falls Gorge, and you'll see some various trailheads to different ponds. Then you'll go past River Road on your left, you'll climb a little bit, flattens out, and then you head up the Three Bears, which we'll get to, but that's, you know, some of the more famous climbs on the course. So it's not purely straight up. There's plenty of sections that are just flat or falls flat in between the steeper pitches here, or even a little bit downhill. So it's, you know, pretty steady. There's plenty of portions where you can get back into your bars, relax a little bit in between some of the more challenging portions, which are probably about like 5% grade. Again, you're not going to be getting the like super, super steep hills through there. What here though, you want to be patient through here. It's very easy to overpace the first loop. So just, you know, again, try to stick to your targets. When we talk about the Three Bears, so Three Bears are Mama Bear, Baby Bear, and Papa Bear. They're like the named hills on the course. They just tend to get a lot of attention, a lot of fear, but they're mostly, you will have climbed worse stuff than them before you get to them. They're mostly notorious just because they are at the end of each loop. So just, you know, you're kind of over climbing by that point. You've got this one more little like steeper pitch. Mama Bear and Baby Bear are barely anything, but Papa Bear is just more of a climb. But at the same time, you will have done worse. And it is, you know, people do tend to come out and cheer there. So there is good crowd support. There are a lot of people cheering, which is nice. Then after you make it up Papa Bear, you do sort of like a little out and back on 86. You'll cross over to the, and then you will make this left-hand turn onto Northwoods, which is like on a little bit of a pitch up. You will loop through town. You'll go behind Transition. You'll go behind the high school again, where your special needs bags will be, and then you will repeat. So just various scenes from the climb. This is sort of earlier on when you first start climbing up out of Wilmington. This is by Flume Falls, I believe. This is by Whiteface. By Whiteface is one of the more challenging climbs through that portion. When you start seeing the signs for Whiteface Mountain, it pitches up a little more. This here is Papa Bear looking up, and then this is Papa Bear looking down. And then we have just you're a little out and back on 86, where you'll actually cross over to the opposite side of the street just so you can make the turn onto Northwoods without crossing over into oncoming cyclists. So bike fueling, there are aid stations approximately every 10 to 15 miles on the course. There's 5 per loop. Just be aware that there's a bigger gap from about mile 47 to about mile 64. So from about like 9 miles left on one loop to about 8 miles into the next one. And most of this is uphill, so it will be a fairly sizable time gap. So I would suggest making sure to grab something at mile 47 if you're taking from the course. If you're taking from special needs, you'll have that in there, but otherwise try to get a bottle. At your bottle exchanges, you'll have water, Gatorade, and Gatorade Endurance, orange flavored. There will be Morton gels, both caffeinated and non-caffeinated gels, bars, and bananas. You can also, depending on your hydration setup, carry your own mix, carry your own drink, and then refill grab your special needs bag. So your special needs is located sort of behind the high school here at the end of the first loop on Cummins Road. Kind of come up a small hill. When you see special needs, there'll be someone at the bottom. You just yell out your number. They'll megaphone it up to special needs and you can grab your bag. And then don't stop directly there. Try to bring your bag a little bit past special needs and take what you need out of it and hand it back. And again, be heads up at aid stations. If you are someone that is planning to stop and refill bottles, don't stop directly in the middle of the aid station, grab what you need, and then move to the end of the aid station, move aside. Just make sure you're very, very careful through there. And again, don't bomb through there too and spill bottles everywhere either. So Morton gels, the black ones do not contain caffeine. The white ones contain caffeine. So Morton gels are low in sodium. They only have 22 milligrams versus 200 milligrams in most gels. So if you're planning to use Morton gels from the course, I would recommend having some sort of sodium supplement, whether it's a pill, a tab, just loose salt along with that. The caffeinated ones are high in caffeine. They contain 100 milligrams. Most other gels, a single caffeinated gel would be about 20 to 25 milligrams. A double caffeinated would be about 50 milligrams. So Morton gel, just be aware if you're taking that caffeinated one, it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 times the amount of caffeine you might get in a different branded gel. And their consistency is that of a hydrogel. Moving on to pacing the bike course. So generally, like QT2 recommends pacing an Ironman heart rate wise as a U shape. So heart rate will always be a little bit higher coming out of the water. That's normal when you're moving from swimming to upright and running and getting on the bike. And then it should kind of level out after about a quarter of the way into the race. And then you want to try to bring it back up the final quarter of the race to prepare yourself better for running. This isn't necessarily as possible on this course because you hit a giant descent 12 miles in. So, the U shape might be more kind of per loop than per the whole time. But ideally, you want the second half to be about your second loop to heart rate to be about 2 to 3 beats higher than on the first loop. If you're pacing by power, you want to meter out the power as evenly as you can on the flats and gradual hills, and then contain on the climbs. You want to try to flatten out the course as much as possible. So use your gears. Ideally, you want to try to cap your power about 50 watts over what you expect your power to be for the whole day. That should be possible with the vast majority of the hills on here. They're not super, super high grades. The descent, if you're looking at your overall average power, the descent will knock that down because you're getting, 5 miles of close to zero in there. So don't necessarily go out and then try to hammer to make up your average power. Just settle back into what you want it to be. Second loop ideally would be a little bit slightly higher. And then again, don't overdo those first 10 to 12 miles. Very easy to overdo the climb out of town. So just keep it calm and don't overdo the final 11 miles of the first loop. The climb always seems a little bit easier on the first loop than the second. So just keep that in mind. You have to do it again. Pace wise, the pace will be widely variable on this course. There's obviously lots of descending climbing. There can be wind, weather. So try not to get too caught up into pace. RPE should be about a 5 to 7 on a scale of 10, depending on where your training's at. And just kind of some of the sticking points, again, to be careful of are the climbs on the first loop. after leaving town on the first loop can be a point that's a little bit of like a low point, just because, you know, you go through town, everyone's screaming, everyone's yelling, you get this lift, and then all of a sudden you're out of there and it's quiet and you realize you have to do it again. So I just try to keep spirits, power up through there. Again, another sticking point I found could be the bottom of the descent. You get this sort of nice rest, and then all of a sudden you have to bring yourself back up, get going again. And then at some point during the climb on the second loop, I think everyone goes through a little bit of a dark space. So just try to work through that as well. And then pacing wise, this was just kind of, if anyone's nerdy, the year I won, I actually was just doing an aside, like a study for UConn where they were looking at basic pacing and recovery methods. And then when I won the race, they were like, oh, let's do a case study on you and your pacing. But basically their conclusion was that a pacing study or pacing strategy where your speed varies, but heart rate and power stay as consistent as possible is more ideal for an Ironman. And then I just threw this slide in here because I feel like a lot of people have questions about bike equipment for this race. For the vast majority of athletes, if you've trained on a tri bike, you will be fine on your tri bike. There are a lot of prolonged, relatively flat stretches. The climb does flatten out in areas where you can get into your bars. And then in terms of your gearing, if you're whatever crank, if you've trained on hills, you will be fine with whatever crank you have. You know, most of the climbing's at 3 to 5% grade. I would recommend having, cassette wise, having like a 28 to 30 ring just to have that little bit of an extra gear though for the climbs, just save your legs a little bit. Wheel choice, again, it depends on the wind, it depends on your comfort level and your experience. So as I said before, there can be crosswinds on the descent. So you might not want to go super, super deep on your front wheel if you're more tentative with that small. And then if you are someone though that's a stronger rider, more experienced, it's still a course that even with the climbing that will be a little bit faster with a disc wheel if you can handle it, but always err on the side of comfort level. If you're sitting up white knuckling, it will completely just negate any advantages you might get from trying to go super deep wheel wise. As for penalties and rules on race day, so these are some of the penalties that you might run into on the bike course. I think most people know drafting. It's a blue, you'll be shown a blue card. It's a 5-minute penalty. Drafting, you have to keep 6 lengths between your front wheel and the rear wheel of the cyclist in front of you. If you go to pass, it must be completed within 25 seconds. If you are passed, you have to make, quote, immediate and constant rear progress after being passed. You should be out of the draft zone of the person in front of you within 25 seconds. That's another way to get a drafting penalty if you don't drop back. If you get, God forbid, 3 blue cards, you will be shown a red card and be disqualified. And if you are carded at any point, you need to stop at the very next penalty tent you see. There's usually, I think, 1 in transition and 1 on course. You can't just pick and choose which one you want to go to. You have to go to the next one. Less serious is a yellow card. So this would be a blocking violation. This is if you're riding further to the left of the lane and you're impeding the progress of another rider. You can get a blocking violation. So you want to keep right as you safely can. This is just it's a 60-second penalty and you want to stop at the next penalty tent. Littering. So this is intentional littering. If you take a bottle and throw it on the course, just don't do that under any circumstances ever. But if you are caught doing that, you will be given a blue card. And then just some of the rules. Your chin strap must be fastened whenever you're on the bike. Just make that the first thing you do in transition, the last thing you do in T2. Cell phones, MP3 players, etc., cannot be used in a, quote, distractive manner. So you can't be making phone calls or texting or taking pictures on the course. Hopefully everyone knows that. Don't be playing music. Ideally, don't even have your phone. I know some people will still bring it, but just it should not be seen on the course. You cannot have outside assistance. So, you know, friends, coaches, etc., cannot run or ride alongside you. They can't hand you nutrition. They can't hand you anything. Everything has to be taken from the course. In terms of everyone loves the zipper rule, you are allowed to unzip your top, but the zipper must remain connected at the bottom and the top must stay over the shoulders. The athlete guide said you're supposed to zip up for the finish line. I'm sure if you're at the end of an Ironman and you forget to, nothing's going to happen, but that's what it says. Females can pull down and run in a sports bra. And you cannot cross the finish line with non-racers, which I think anyone who's done an Ironman event would know. So moving on to our run course. So again, our run course is, you've got downhills out of transition, then you've got a long, flat to slightly rolling section on River Road, and then you come back up what you went down, sort of similar to the bike course. Ironman says it's about 800 feet of elevation gain per loop. A lot of the files I've seen from athletes have that closer to about 500 feet, depending on the watch. So take that with a grain of salt. I mean, you'll run up stuff. It's about what it is. It is a 2-loop, technically, out and basically kind of 2 out and back sections. You'll come down Main Street here out of transition. You'll come down Sentinel Road, which is Route 73, what you started the bike on. Then you'll flatten out for a little bit, come down Cascade. Then you turn onto River Road, do your long out and back on River Road, come back up what you went down. Then you'll pass through Main Street again. Then you'll do another out and back. That's more of like a mile-ish on Mirror Lake Drive there. And then repeat with the second loop, you finish in the Olympic Oval. There's a mix of sun and shade on the course. River, depending if it's a cloudy day or not too, can get pretty toasty out there. So be prepared for that. So again, as I said before, you've got sort of this like 2-tiered downhill out of transition. So you come out of transition, it's a pretty steep downhill there. Doesn't necessarily feel the best on your quads after biking, but at least you get the help of gravity there. Then it will flatten out a little bit. You'll go down another kind of sizable descent through there. And that's the first portion there. Then you'll hit River Road, which, everyone says it's not completely flat. There is a little bit of like undulation up and down. So, but it's compared to the rest of the course, it's relatively flat. Makes up the out and back total makes up about half your loop. It's about 6.5 miles. Again, it's quiet. The spectators, it's pretty much can only get there on foot. I think, not sure if they let people on bike there anymore or not. It can get very muggy out there. It can get stagnant, but it is very pretty. You've got other racers out there. You've got aid stations. So it's not super lonely. It's a nice section of running. And then coming off River Road, again, you have to go back up initially, that kind of first climb off of River Road, which is punchy, not that fun. And then get a nice flat section. Then you come back up Sentinel Road there, which is probably the steepest section of the course. You have to come up Main Street. Then you get like a little bit of a reprieve before you have to go up a little bit more on Mirror Lake Drive, but then you get to at least come back down all that. So run course pictures here. This is coming out of transition. Again, you can see it's, pretty sizable downhill there. This is not even the steepest portion. The steepest portion is that initial part of 73. This is on River Road, and don't paint on River Road either. The people who wrote this got in trouble for that from Ironman. It's kind of long story, but anyways, that's River Road. You get, a little bit of kind of uphill. You won't be completely even on pace, but relatively speaking. And then this is coming back up Main Street, basically towards the end when it's very painful and very long. But then finally you get to finish on the Olympic Oval, which is one of the coolest finish lines in Ironman. Run fueling. You'll have aid stations approximately every mile on the run. Pretty similar stuff to what you have on the bike. You have water. This time you have lemon lime Gatorade Endurance for a nice change in flavor. Most of the aid stations will have Red Bull at them. They'll have the Morton gels again. Bars, run aid stations, they do have Coca-Cola, which is a godsend usually at some point. They'll have chips, pretzels, bananas, oranges, and grapes for food. And then later in the evening, if the temperature starts to drop, especially when the temperature starts to drop, they'll have broth out there. And usually they'll have, especially if it's a hot day, they'll stock up on ice and icy sponges. And again, you can also carry your own nutrition and again, stock up again at special needs, which is special needs is on Mirror Lake Drive back through here. So towards the end of your first loop. So pacing wise, race day run pacing. Tim Snow will yell at everyone to slow down right out of transition, regardless of who you are. But you want to aim for a bike heart rate or a run heart rate that's about 5 to 10 beats over your bike heart rate. Might not get there right away coming downhill out of transition, but once you get to the flatter portions, you want to try to settle in there. If you are running with power, if you're using a stride or so on, you want to, again, try to keep it as even as possible over the terrain within reason. I mean, it's obviously it is going to spike a little bit higher up the hills. There is no getting around that. They're tough. You want to, again, try to keep the second half heart rate and power wise as close to the first half as possible, with the caveat that this is an Ironman. So, I mean, a lot of times the run is just about trying to hang on as well as you can and slow down as little as you can. I mean, some people physiology wise almost will be better off trying to go out a little bit faster than their goal pace. And, you know, if training wise, it's very, very hard to get in the volumes of training where you won't slow down at all. But just, again, don't overdo that first downhill out of transition. You can wreck your quads pretty easily. You can get a lot of damage from the eccentric pounding. So be light on your feet, be gentle through there. And then the steep hills, the 2 steep hills up 73 off of River Road and then back up into town, walk them as needed. A lot of times will tell athletes, just especially the first loop, just plan to walk them. It's really not going to be any slower than running. And it's much, much better on the body. Second loop, if you want to run them, if you still feel that way, go for it. But usually for the majority of people, just walking some of the steeper sections is a good plan. And then pace wise, you'll be a little bit faster than your goal pace out of transition, obviously, because you're running downhill. But don't go crazy, settle in on River Road. And again, don't chase pace on climbs, just let it be what it is. And want to keep the RPE, again, training wise, depending on how strong of a runner you are, about a 5 to 7 on a scale of 10. You usually want to start more around the 5, and it will naturally build on its own because it's an Ironman and it is long. Mental fitness wise, moving on to that cornerstone. You want to focus on your goals as #1 priority. So again, these are the things you have 100% control over, which are your attitude and your fueling plan. Secondarily, then focus on your targets, your power, your pace, your heart rate. Stick to your plan, including how you react when something doesn't go according to that plan. Outcome wise, so if you're trying to chase down a specific place or a time, I mean, place is harder to tell with a rolling start, but a world championship slots, use that as motivation on the second half of the run. That's when you want to kind of dig in and say, you know, I have to run X pace to be under X time, you know, use that as your motivation at that time. And be who you are, you know, just don't try to race anyone else's race, stick to your own plan, stick to yourself, you know, and show appreciation for supporters, show appreciation for volunteers, family, friends, other racers, just be gracious out there, you know, smile at your support staff, and it makes the day go by a lot quicker if you are that way. Time cutoffs. So, you know, I think pretty classic, probably most people know you have 17 hours to complete the entire race. If you do not complete the event within 17 hours, you'll be given a DNF. And it's 17 hours from when you cross the starting line into the water is when your 17-hour time clock starts, not from when the race starts. Intermediate cutoff. So swim course closes 2 minutes and 20 seconds after the last athlete enters the water. So each individual athlete has 2 hours and 20 minutes to complete the 2.4 mile swim. So if you start at 6:40 and you get out at 8:01, you're over the time cutoff, even if someone else started at 7 and, you know, this course doesn't officially close until 9:20, should have said 9:01. But anyways, each individual person has 2 hours and 20 minutes to complete the swim. And then another thing to know about that is T1 closes 10 minutes after the swim course closes. So if you come in, you know, 2:10 after the last athlete enters the water, and then you need to get out of the transition within 20 minutes. You can't spend 30 minutes in transition because then you'll be off over that time limit. Bike wise, so the bike course closes 10 hours and 30 minutes after the last athlete enters the water. So each individual athlete has their own 10:30 to complete swim, T1, and the bike course. Any athlete that takes longer than that will receive a DNF. And again, similar to the run course or the swim T1 cutoff, T2 cutoff is 10 minutes after the bike course cutoff. There is an intermediate bike cutoff. You must pass behind the high school to start your second lap by 1:40 p.m. So this is depending on how long it takes everyone to get into the water, anywhere from about 6 hours and 45 minutes to 7 hours into the race. This does not mean that if you think you're going to be close to the cutoff that you should start up with the 1 hour swimmers. You probably wouldn't make the bike cutoff anyways. Still be realistic about your swim time, but just keep in mind that, you know, if you do have a mechanical or something happen on that first lap, that you need to be through behind the high school by 1:40 p.m. Then run cutoff, again, that's the full course cutoff is the 17 hours. And you must start the second loop at Main Street, Mirror Lake Drive by the town hall by 9 p.m. I have seen people who have missed that cutoff who have continued on the course and they won't like physically remove them, but you don't finish, you don't get an official time. But so you just have to be on your loop by 9 p.m. And just another note on the run course too, is it can get dark at night. If you are out there late, they will give out like the glow necklaces. I think there's some floodlights on River Road by the aid stations. I think I put in there earlier too, you know, you might want to throw like a headlamp or something if you in your special needs bag, if you think if you're going to be out past dark, just something to be aware of. Spectating wise, so if people who are trying to track you, have them download the IRONMAN athlete tracking app. There's some pre-agreed locations. They can see you along the course. So swim might be able to catch a quick glimpse between laps. That's a little bit harder, pretty hard to recognize people running out of the water. And you can catch people kind of running from the lake into T1. There's a long stretch along there. You might not, I mean, there's a ton of people there. They might not recognize you necessarily, but it's a good place to just spectate. Bike wise, you can catch athletes just initially out of transition, or if you're so inclined, just go down 73 a little bit, go out of town. Those are some good places. Depending on where you're staying to, if you're staying down in Wilmington, there will be people who will be cheering down in Wilmington by the start of the climb and etc. But for the most of the people that are staying down in town, you'll want to mostly would just see them out of transition. At the end of the first lap and start of the second is another place for people to spectate you. Again, I said already that Papa Bear is pretty popular spectation wise. And there's that little out and back on 86 after Papa Bear. That's a good place to spectate. There'll be a lot of people on Mirror Lake Drive and Parkside and Main Street when you do that little loop through town. So that's another place for people to catch you. And then one of my favorite places to spectate the bike is actually sort of by special needs up behind the high school on Colvin, because there's a little bit of an uphill. So you can catch somebody, you can see somebody's helmet sticker, you can prepare a little bit ahead of time and they're going a little bit slower. So if you want to actually communicate with someone, that's probably one of the best places on the bike course to do so, is just by that special needs by the top of that hill there. Then run wise, it's a very spectator friendly run course. I mean, you can spectate anywhere. It's sort of along that out and back from Route 73, up on Main Street, up on Mirror Lake Drive. Athlete will pass there, you know, twice. So they'll pass going out, coming back in, and then going back out again, coming back in. If someone is spectating you on Main Street, there is time to get to the Olympic Oval for the finish. So I can attest to, there have been many times I've like pushed through people trying to get from Main Street to the Olympic Oval to watch one of my athletes finish, and then still there for 20 minutes, because you still do have like 2.5 miles from the time somebody passes on Main Street once they do the out and back on Mirror Lake Drive to get to the finish. Then post race, you can come join us at the QT2 tent, finer moments. Gear checkout is from 6 p.m. to midnight. You either have to have your athlete wristband, or if somebody's checking out your gear for you, they need to have your ticket signed off on. If you finish in time and you're physically able, I recommend coming back out to cheer. It's a lot of fun to come back out on the course if you can, if you're so inclined. The next day, if you're somebody looking who finished in the awards, which is top 5 per age group, or somebody interested in a world championship slot allocation will occur at 9 a.m. at the horse show. So Ironman Lake Placid this year has 100 Kona slots for the women and 65 Nice slots for the men. I would guess, especially at this point in the year, especially the Nice slots, they will roll down pretty far. So, because it's, like 6 or 7 weeks before the race. And so I would recommend, if you're interested in a slot, it's definitely worth showing up. Again, as previously mentioned, this race does let you pick up your morning, or not your special needs bags, that should say, until 11 a.m. where you drop them off. And then I would also say, just kind of a note to try to support the local community after the race. This race, I love this race, but you always hear a lot of like horror stories about tension with the locals, and every time it's up for renewal, there's always debate. So I think it's the minority of locals and it's the minority of triathletes that are issues with each other. So I think it's just important as an athlete to try to spread goodwill throughout the community here. So, try to, before the race, after the race, hit up some of the local shops and restaurants. I mean, I know you're spending $1 million. Lodging is expensive. The race is expensive, but if you want something, like a little souvenir from the race, I would recommend, instead of buying, $300 worth of M.Dot things from the merchandise tents, there's a lot of shops that have like really, really neat, just unique Ironman related gifts. I've gotten, like signs and Christmas ornaments and that kind of thing. And so just, if you can put a little bit into some of the shops and restaurants and stuff there, it just makes them more receptive to letting us come and continue having this great race there. Just be courteous to everyone who works there, tip well if you go out to eat. And, I just kind of put this little note, just be the person that makes someone's day better. Even if you're don't have money to spend, just be someone that's just, thanks a local or says something nice, or, just is polite and respects the community as a whole. Don't be the person that's riding down the middle of the road and like peeing in somebody's front yard. Be the person, that triathlete that, people will remember having a positive experience with. And also it's such a great area. There's so many things to explore between all the Olympic sites. There's some easy hiking trails you can go to afterwards. I mean, there's like High Falls Gorge. There's a lot of stuff to go and see after the race that is really, really enjoyable. Anyway, there's QT2 as a whole. If you would like to follow us, there's our website and socials. And there's just my personal information, my dogs, and if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was really informative and great to have someone with such local experience talk about the course. So I don't see any questions in the chat box now, but if anyone has a question, you can type it into the chat box or feel free to come off of mute and ask Jenny now.
Hi, my name is Deanna.
Hi, Deanna.
Hi, I just have a quick question on the special need, or like all the gear bags.
Yeah.
So for the gear bags, everything that you put in, you won't have access to, and you might have said this, I don't know if I misheard, but you won't have access to the bags again, or you said you will. Okay.
You should have access to them. I think I've done I feel like I've maybe done like 1 or 2 Ironmans in the past where for whatever reason they didn't let us access our gear bags on race morning, but I'm pretty sure, I mean, they're right in transition. I'm fairly certain you should be able to access them race morning.
Okay, so that like if I forget, I don't know if I want to put other gels or whatever in the morning for a few, but the special needs bags, those you would drop off earlier or the day before?
The special needs you drop off race morning.
Race morning, okay.
Yeah.
Got
it. Right it.
And how does that section work? Do people get off the bikes and I don't know, I can't visualize that. Do you just kind of go to the side and
So it's like I said, it's kind of, you come up a little bit of a hill and there'll be somebody at the base of the hill. If you want your special needs, you just yell your race number to them, make sure you're loud about it, and they'll megaphone it up to someone up the hill who will grab your bag. And then ideally you want to try to grab the bag and then just go a few feet up away from directly
Yeah.
in front of special needs. I mean, some people will stop directly in front, but try
Okay.
to move a little bit past and then just, but not by, then you can get your stuff out and don't go
Right.
too far past, because otherwise you can't hand the bag back. But
Back. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that whole thing take like a lot of time?
no,
Does it? Oh, okay.
it's pretty quick. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, and one more question. You said like when we're getting out of the water, do you just go back to your, like, usually I take off my wetsuit and then like in my transition, or like whether there's wetsuit taker off for people, but then you just like would run to your transition space, right? There's not like, you said a tent.
Yeah,
was-
so there should be, I think, I don't know if they should have wetsuit strippers, I think, right out of the
Okay.
lake. Some years they haven't for
Yeah.
a couple of years because it was COVID. I think they're bringing
Right.
it back
Yeah.
now. And then you'll do the long run up to transition. And then once you get to transition, they'll kind of direct you. You will go to the hook where your bag is hanging up. You'll grab your bike bag. And then from the bike bag, you'll be directed into a women's changing tent, and there'll be a volunteer to help you in the changing tent. And from there,
Oh,
you
okay.
can, yeah. So, I mean, if you want to like full change into bike gear, you can too. Or,
Okay, got it.
full change into run gear, you can.
Oh,
'cause
so
there are-
your bag is hanging not next to your bike, like at other
Yeah,
triathlons
yeah,
I've done.
it
Okay.
is. Yeah, I think I have picture somewhere of the.
Yeah, I thought I saw a bunch of bags hanging somewhere.
They're somewhere in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's
Okay.
the bike check-in. You put them on little hooks, and again, that's
Okay,
something
so
you
they're
would
not
wanna-
next to your bike
No,
and like
no.
other, okay.
There we go. Yeah, so you would, they're hanging on these hooks. You run to your hook, you grab your bag, and then you go into the
Got it.
changing tent. and
Okay,
then
cool.
Get it all set, everything set, and then you run out to your bike.
Okay, perfect.
And then,
Okay,
and the bike, and it's kind of, there should actually, I think it said they do have bike handlers again this year. So when you come into T2, somebody will take your bike for you. And then you'll
oh,
grab
okay.
your run bag and run into the tent again, and change shoes, change whatever you want to in the change tent. It's women's only. You can change anything you want. Then you can head out on your run.
Got it. Okay, yeah, just very different from the other
Yeah,
track. I
yeah.
haven't done a full yet, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The
Okay.
full with the bags is very, very different than doing it half
Yeah.
next to your bike. It will all be. It's nice.
Right.
It flows very well once you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, thank you.
We do have a question in the chat box, which is thinking of the Gatorade Endurance 24-ounce bottles. Any idea the source or online vendor to get a few ahead of time? Just wanted to confirm that they'll fit in my bike cages.
I think, I mean, that Gatorade Endurance, I would guess that you can probably buy the bottles on the Gatorade, just the Gatorade site. I'm not sure if you can get the actual bottles, but I have the Gatorade Endurance bottles they hand out on the course. And in US Ironmans, they've always been okay fitting in just a standard bottle cage for me. I mean, if you have something that's like super horizontal, sticking out the back of your bike, you might have a little bit of trouble getting it to stay in, but as long as it's my down tube cage has always held them fine.
Jenny, thank you very much. That was my question. I just, if they fit in the cages on your bike, which I'm sure is smaller than mine, then they should fit. I was just concerned with the fitting in the frame. I got a new bike in the last year and just,
yeah, they'll fit for sure.
just wanted to make, because I have some other bike bottles that just don't like to fit in there if they're more than 20 ounces.
Yeah. I mean, they're tall, but I have a 50-centimeter frame and they fit in there okay.
If they fit in yours, they should be good. All
Yeah,
right,
they
thank
should
you
be
very
okay.
much.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it. So if you have any questions, after I think that Jenny had her email at the end of the presentation, this will be up on YouTube. And you can also, if you want to watch it again or share it with anyone, you're welcome to do that. You can also put in questions on the YouTube site. We can get back to you there. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you everyone for attending this evening.
Thank
so
you.
much.